Hi, this is Mike Warner from Work Hard Playlist Hard. You're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast with my friends Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Billboard to pay the bills, some artists are writing music directly for fans.
From Music Tech Solutions, the Vinyl Resurgence is Understated.
Another from Billboard, in Streaming-Centric Industry, all stakeholders must come to the table for lasting change.
And from Pollstar, the future is now. Major tours are here. Woohoo! This and more. This is episode 84 of the Your Morning Coffee podcast. Sit back, buckle in, because here we go.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Happy Saturday, Jay. So good to see you, my friend.
So good to see you.
Nice day outside here in sunny Southern California.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Feels like spring has arrived, and it's kind of exciting for me. It's not like we suffer through winter weather, really, but
no, not really.
Exactly.
Not really.
But it's good to have warmer weather and longer days. I am digging it. It's more time to get caught up on this wacky new music business.
Oh, so much going on. Before we kick it off, though, I wanted to just mention that in Your Morning Coffee, the newsletter this week, the lead story I found online, and I read it, and it was amazing. It was from the Financial Times, and I thought, wow, that's kind of cool, because usually the articles from the Financial Times are behind a paywall, and I don't subscribe to the Financial Times, although I probably should. So I put it in Your Morning Coffee, and as soon as I sent it out, somebody sent me a note saying, oh man, I really wanted to read that, but it's behind the paywall. And I went, what? No, it's not. And I went to it, and well, now it is. So the headline was, Spotify draws up plans to join NFT digital collectibles craze. And again, that's from the Financial Times. And, you know, you and I talk about NFTs from time to time, and we won't go down that rabbit hole right now, but I did think it was interesting that they're finally, talking about some of these DSPs like Spotify getting into non-fungible tokens. So more to come, but I apologize that one slipped behind the paywall.
It happens, but just for my own curiosity, so obviously Spotify owns none of the music that they distribute. So if they get involved in NFTs, is that going to be as a service for artists that have uploaded their music to the service?
Yeah, that's the assumption right now, is because they wouldn't own the rights, they will partner with a rights holder, or one of these really cool partners, like one of, some of these NFT companies. One of is owned by Quincy Jones companies, and it's interesting because they produce kind of green NFTs, without with a not the heavy carbon footprint, as you probably know. NFTs take a tremendous amount of energy to create, and companies like One Of are finding ways to create those without that carbon footprint. And, they're working with some of the biggest companies, on the planet. So it remains to be seen, like, what these offers will be. But I would imagine it's going to be a part of a lot of these new release cycles. And I know a lot of our artists and managers right now are already putting NFTs as part of their offering when they go into a release cycle. And just for those of you that don't know, you can Google this stuff, but it's a digital collectible. Think of it as like a baseball card. That piece of cardboard isn't worth much. But if you have that collectible and it's an original, and the reason an NFT is an original is because it can be proved on the blockchain that you own that original one. So anyway, more to be talked about. But yeah, Spotify is going to be one of the first, as far as the DSPs, to join that digital collectibles craze.
Woohoo! By the way, big thanks to Mike Warner for giving us the intro.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Yeah. Let's give him a quick little plug. Mike is a friend of mine. I really dig this guy. He's one of those guys that's helping the independent artists, and he has a book called Work Hard, Playlist Hard. And the first version was really about, user-curated playlists primarily, whereas the new version of the book, his second edition, it has all of the different platforms and how best to optimize for them. It's not trickery or gaming the system. It's really just common sense and optimization. I was honored to write a few little chapters in that book with Mike, but he wrote 99.9% of it, and it's my kind of go-to guide, and I share it with clients and friends. It's just one of the best resources. There's that, the Donald Passman book, there's a few of these things that everybody should have.
A handful of must reads, and I've turned that so many different artists and friends of mine that are involved in releasing music. I've said you've got to read this one. Super important. Great read.
So thank you for the intro there, Mike.
Of course, we certainly appreciate it, Mike. Yeah. Thank you. And by the way, the guy that I get to talk with every week is none other than Jay Gilbert. He is the co-founder of music marketing and strategy company Label Logic, creator of the Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal, Sony, and Warner Music Groups. And if you get a few drinks in him, that guy can sing some show tunes. Let me tell you.
And this comedian alongside of me is Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music.
Yep, couldn't hold a job, for crying out loud, in lots of different places. And Jay, without our sponsors, we would be like helpless. And so it's so nice to have sponsors when we have put this show on. And I want to give a big shout out to them, including the Music Business Association. The 4-day Music Biz 2022 conference agenda has just been announced, taking place May 9th through 12th at the JW Marriott in lovely Nashville, along with returning favorites like the Metadata Summit, hashtag NextGenNow, DSP workshops, and Brand Summit. To name just a few, you'll find timely new additions for 2022, including conversations on NFTs, as we've been talking about, gaming and immersive music experiences, catalog acquisitions, and much, much more. Jump over to musicbiz.org for more information, and Jay Gilbert will be there.
I will be there. It's going to be a fantastic conference. We've had the last two, I believe, remotely via Zoom, and it's going to be great to see everybody again. So don't miss it, May 9th through 12th in Nashville.
And hopefully you'll beat the humidity in Nashville, because it should be lovely that time.
It just ruins my hair. Your Morning Coffee podcast is also brought to you by our friends at Bandzoogle, built by musicians for musicians. Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform, makes it easy to build a beautiful website and EPK for your music. All the features you need for a professional website are already built in: hosting and a custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, tools to sell your music and merch, commission-free, that's the key, commission-free crowdfunding and fan subscription features, mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send newsletters, social media integrations, and live support from their musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Your Morning Coffee podcast listeners can go to bandzoogle.com, try it for free for 30 days. Just use the promo code MORNINGCOFFEE, all one word, Morning Coffee, and you'll get 15% off your first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code MORNINGCOFFEE.
And we are also sponsored by Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. It is edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Bands in Town. Over 65 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist services platform, connecting over 550,000 artists with their super fans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
Indeed. So big thanks to our friends at the Music Business Association, Bandzoogle, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. Couldn't do it without you.
We appreciate it.
1,000 thank yous. And Jay, what do you say we jump into
Let's
our
do it.
stories? Yes, indeed. I'm going to get my little desktop organized
There you
here.
go. This
So-
first one is from Billboard,
Yes,
written
indeed.
by Chris Egertson, and the headline is "Songs for Sale. To pay the bills, some artists are writing music directly for fans."
And as the article points out, in many ways, this is kind of back to the future, right?
Yeah.
If you go back to well before antiquity, or well before recorded music, at least, this was kind of the way it worked. A lot of very famous composers, they would have wealthy people that would support them and pay for their music to be written. And now it's, for a variety of reasons, it's coming back. Members of Stars, Everclear, and other acts are turning to the ages-old commissioning model for additional revenue.
Yeah, and we've been deep
things
into
change.
this for years. This may be new to a lot of people, but it's certainly not new to us. For example, a couple of years ago, we were working a couple of releases from the band, the Licorice Quartet, and those fans of bands like Jellyfish and Imperial Drag and Moog Cookbook and some of that will know Eric Dover, Tim Smith, and Roger Joseph Manning Jr. And they've got kind of this amazing fan base following. Anyway, when we launched their website and launched their releases, we offered exactly what they're talking about. So they would perform or record on your song for $350, or they'll record your favorite song for you, right, for $750. And a couple of other ones, they will co-write a song with you, like over Zoom. Like, actually, you could write a song with one of these guys, which would be amazing, right?
Gosh,
For
totally cool.
$750, or they will write a song for you for $250. And I actually took them up on this. I don't know if I ever told you, but
No.
I wanted to record this song for my wife. It was written by Matt Bissonette, called When I Didn't Know Your Name. And Matt is Elton John's bass player, dear friend of mine, fantastic producer, engineer, bass player, songwriter. His brother is Greg Bissonette, from Ringo Starr and from David Lee Roth. Anyway, long story short, my dear friends, like Eric Dover played the guitar part. Matt kind of engineered and helped do the harmony vocals with me, and the Accidentals played the cello and violin. And I got to record this song pretty much remotely, although Matt and I did get together, and give it to my wife. So it's kind of like, when you talk about Cameo and Thrills.co.uk, or some of those places where you can get a shout out video from the Soup Nazi from Seinfeld or whoever, right? Some of those things, which I did for my dad, by the way. So it kind of winds back down to what we're talking about in this story. These commissions, bands have been doing this. Like I said, the Licorice Quartet has been doing this. But now I think it's becoming a little bit more mainstream, and artists are finding that you can make decent money. The first one here, they talk about the indie band Stars, and they started these song commissions for $1,000 each and sold 70 of them right off the bat. Now, I don't have a calculator handy,
But that's pretty soon you're talking about some money.
Right.
As he said, the one of the guys and one of the people in the band, I think his name is Torquil Campbell. I'm not
Yes.
sure if that's the correct
I think that's right.
pronunciation. Yeah, he said it's been insane. I haven't had response to anything like this in years. And he, like you said, he's received 70 commissions to date. I'm sort of trying to figure out why, in a way. Really, all I said was that I was available to hire to do what I do for a living. But that seems to have blown people's minds. But you know, especially if you grew up in an era like we did, where artists were unobtainable, they were
unreachable.
They lived on some other planet, and they didn't go to the same grocery store as you did. They were somewhere else.
Can you imagine growing up if you could have reached out to, Queen or Elton John or whoever your favorite band was growing up, and actually, number one, got in touch with them, and number two, were able to collaborate with them?
Unimaginable. This guy Torquil, he said, COVID-19 is only the most recent and acute setback for independent acts, some of whom have argued that streaming revenue alone doesn't provide enough money to pay the bills. That reality, coupled with the loss of earnings from touring, has led him and several other artists to turn to the centuries-old model of individual song commissions, and some are seeing substantial returns.
Yeah.
You got to love that. A couple of artists you may recall, just a little bit before Kiss and Bad Company, all those bands came out, there was Handel and Bach, and both of them relied on the generosity of the aristocratic patrons to produce some of the greatest works, of course, of the Baroque period. So,
yeah, like you were referencing earlier, this is not a new thing. It's a very, very old thing. But I think streaming and the pandemic were the perfect storm. Streaming because of the low revenue compared to physical goods for some of these artists. They need to get revenue some way, right? As you pointed out earlier, it's the music business, and you should be treating it as such. But this is such a great way. I file this under experiences, and I've been watching artists take these experiences and get really creative with them, where they'll, play D&D with you. They will knit you a scarf. They will, handwritten lyrics. And there's all sorts of great things that not just my clients, but I'm seeing other artists do that I find really, really great, really creative. And listen, the fans love this. And as you can tell by this article, they can make some serious money.
Yes. Well, it's really kind of the breaking down of the walls, of the barriers, because technology allows it now. You can have that direct communication and connection to artists and artists to fans. And it really is, it's just kind of the way it's going. A good friend of mine who's a booking agent for tours. There's a lot of these rock and roll cruises, and his acts love to go on those and to work and play on them. And it's a chance if you're a member, if you're on those cruises, they're just walking around, and you can go buy them a drink, you can kind of hang out and chat with them. And for them, they bring their families and they kind of kick back. They're out on this cruise for 4 or 5 days, and it's very relaxing for them. And it's they make good money.
And there's typically different types of performances. Like, the Kiss cruise, they'll do kind of an acoustic set. They'll do the full, makeup and costume set. Rick Springfield did one where he would, go to the piano in the bar and people would just surround him, and he'd take requests or, that sort of thing. And so it's absolutely amazing, that you have that sort of access now with some of these, but you don't have to be, of that level. You just have to have some fans. It doesn't have to be a large fan base. They talk again about that same band, Stars, and the other, another member, Amy Milan. She put out a call for song commissions on Twitter 4 days after, Campbell did. And the singer is charging $1,000 for an individual song and $2,000 for a duo with Campbell. So she's collaborating on select kind of commissions. And, that's generating, for some of these artists, it's generating more money than they would make if they were touring, because you're not renting the van, paying for the high gas prices and all of that. Earlier in the pandemic, that group we were talking about, Stars, launched a Patreon page that has brought in 6 figures. That's amazing.
Membership, $5 a month.
$5 a month, right?
Yeah.
And that would allow fans to look inside the creation of their new album. And we've talked about on this podcast before platforms like Twitch, which you can generate a lot of revenue from. I'm a big fan of Jay Gregory on Twitch, and over the pandemic, I watched him record his new album and interacted with him while he's recording that album. Right? It was surreal to see these tracks being laid down, and then, oh, hey, Jay's in the chat. Hey, how's it going? You know, that sort of thing. It really felt like I was visiting the studio to see like you record with some friends, and I could just, you know, walk in the control booth and everybody waves and you carry on with your business. So these commissioned songs, you know, things like what I just talked about with Jay Gregory, with, you know, things like Cameo, these experiences, it's a whole new world.
It is. And they mentioned a band, the Steel Wheels, that started offering covers for $300, original songs for $450. They have since bumped that up for an original track to $1,500. But as they said, the biggest benefit for us was that it kept us engaged and it kept us creative. And as a band, it kept us alive. Yeah. He said adding that the group actually grew musically because of the project. And so, you know, you got to love that. I think it's again, it's kind of the opportunities that have shown themselves given the technology and the things that are going on in the economy as a whole, makes all of these things doable and possible, right? And potentially very profitable.
Yeah, and there's some new platforms that are emerging to help artists do this. We had one, Downright, that they talk about in this article. We had them on the Music Biz Weekly podcast, but there are other, what they call song shops, you know, like Downright, Songfinch, Song Glorious. You know, they say in this article that Downright is the most ambitious. It allows musicians to set their own prices, though it sets a floor to keep acts from undercutting each other. And, you know, it includes publishing and distribution functions, you know, to help the songs have a second life beyond the commission itself. So this is kind of this new ecosystem where you can commission a song, but then it could be the band's new single.
Sure, absolutely. And, you know, like we've also mentioned in the past, you know, back when Big Champagne first came out, that there was a lot of information that was coming out, you know, especially with as an artist, sometimes you fall in love with certain songs, but you really have no idea of what would be, what tracks are the most important to your fan base.
That's right.
Sometimes you're super completely off base.
Most times, I
exactly
find that
right.
You know, you fall in love with a song, and then you go to the team, and they're like, "No, it's got to be this other song." And to your point with Big Champagne, they could look at the data, and it surprised people. They're like, "You shouldn't be putting that song out. Everybody's resonating with this other one."
Right. And so this kind of direct relationship with your fans, it also gives you very important feedback as to what songs are resonating with them. And like you said, it's oftentimes they are way off base. Yeah. So a lot of great things coming out of this, and it's Songs for Sale, great article and worth checking out because it's out there and it's happening. And if you're on it or if you're representing or working with artists, it should be yet another arrow in your quiver.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say on this article is, you know, we were talking about that company Downright, you know, that platform, and there are others, but they've nearly doubled their artist count. It was about 100, now it's 200. And they have, you know, they've got some names in there already, you know, Filter singer Richard Patrick, Filter's guitarist Johnny Radke. They've got someone from Ozomatli, you know, Everclear. It's becoming a thing. So if you're an artist, you may want to look into some of these platforms and look into if you have the bandwidth to generate some revenue on potentially, you know, commissioning songs, whether it's a cover, original, co-write. It's a pretty cool thing.
Well, and I think a great thing you just said is, and if you have the bandwidth, you know, it's another thing, another opportunity potentially if as an artist, but there are so many things out there. You really do have to kind of look at all of them and say, okay, I'm gonna do these 3 or these 6 or whatever it is, because it can, it's kind of hard to do time management sometimes with all of the opportunities out there.
Right.
So, keep that in mind as well. A really interesting article. This from Music Tech Solutions, our second article we're talking about. The vinyl resurgence is understated.
Yeah, written by our friend Chris Castle, by the way.
Indeed, Chris Castle. He's an attorney. He's a writer. He's
just a great guy. I read so much of what he writes, and I've had the pleasure to get to know him over the last few years. And he's helped me to understand kind of the economics of streaming. He's one of the guys that is shouting from the rooftops about, the Copyright Royalty Board, and we'll get into that in a second here. But before we get into this piece, there's a video that accompanies it, and it's from Jack White, and it's called "A Plea to the Three Major Labels" from Jack White. Let's let that roll, because that's going to kind of set the stage for this piece.
It's only a minute, so here we go right now.
This is Third Man Pressing, Third Man Records pressing plant that I built and opened in 2017 using my own money. It's 2022 now, and it's no longer a fad. Vinyl records have exploded in the last decade, and their demand is incredibly high. A small punk band can't get their record for 8 to 10 months. And I now ask the major labels, Warner Brothers, Universal, and Sony, to finally build your own pressing plants again. As the MC5 once said, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. Thank you.
So, as Chris points out in the article, he says the elephant in the room of the discussion about the vinyl resurgence is that we really don't have any idea what the vinyl sales would be because demand is not being met by supply. And so, one of the things Jack is saying as well to the majors is, come on, guys, kick it in and let's see, let's get. And his point, of course, about, there's a lot of small punk bands that they just can't take advantage of the timing of a new release to have a vinyl version because it's a 10-month, whatever the delay is in terms of getting in the supply chain to get it manufactured. It's a real challenge.
Right. And last week we talked about the state of the business in the United States and how vinyl is growing. And as you so eloquently pointed out, that's not a real number because it's this number based on the supply chain problems and the lack of capacity and materials for creating vinyl. And so and that's what this points out, puts a fine point on what you said, which is if we didn't have those issues, imagine what those numbers could have been the last few years. Double? I don't know, but it would have been a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. As Chris points out in the article, he says, when a major label abandons a configuration, it's not really abandoned. It gets outsourced to an independent, and as long as there are manufacturing capacity in the system, that independent still takes orders and fulfills those orders by using that manufacturing capacity. The titles still appear in the sales book, orders get taken and returns accommodated. But he said major labels also hand off vinyl manufacturing to their special markets division. And he says, for example, if you've ever tried to get vinyl manufactured in a limited run for venue sales on a major label artist or a former major label artist, you'll get put through the bureaucratic torture gauntlet for the privilege of paying top dollar on a product that the label will have nothing to do with selling.
Right.
And we've been around special markets for a long, long time. And this was the group, back in the old music business, if you were Bed Bath & Beyond and you wanted to create some sort of a vinyl, or I'm sorry, not a vinyl package, like a CD with a collection of songs for your customers, that went through special markets. And that's always been sort of an unheralded and I wouldn't say secret, but a part of the business that most people don't think about or really even know about.
Right.
And if you go to, if you've ever made a drive across the country and you've stopped at a truck stop and you see these like in the CD era, like $5 CDs, those were done by these special markets groups of the major labels. And it's big money.
It is.
And it always has been. But, as I'm reading this, and we talked a little bit about this last week, about the profits of the major labels currently. And we were discussing kind of how things have changed and wondering how many fewer people actually work for labels these days? And all of the sales offices are essentially gone, and a lot of the infrastructure that major labels used to have to carry to be a major label, they have gotten rid of, and that includes manufacturing. And I think I love that Jack is pleading for them to kind of come back and come back into vinyl manufacturing. I don't think they're going to. It's a headache. And I think my experience working for major labels over the years, because remember, we were both involved in new formats in the early 2000s and super audio CDs and DVD audios and things like that. Yeah. And at the end of the day, major labels, they don't want to do lots of things. They want to do one thing. And right now, the one thing is streaming. Yeah. And that is a lot easier on infrastructure. And is somebody with a spreadsheet at the top, in the home office for the major labels has maybe even done the calculations and said, well, okay, if we bring back vinyl manufacturing, what is the return on that investment?
Yeah, but like this article points out, the majors aren't really hurting as much as the indies because the majors can afford to pre-buy capacity in these pressing facilities globally. But one of the things I was thinking about after reading this piece was, you had pointed out to me a year or two ago that, to make a vinyl album, that's a petroleum product. And with the astronomical price of gas right now, I'm wondering if those expenses are going to hit the vinyl industry hard as well.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm looking at redoing my driveway. I need to redo my asphalt driveway, and I'm afraid to get another quote because I know it's just gone through the roof because of petroleum prices, and certainly that's going to affect vinyl manufacturing without a doubt. So, it's the prices are already high for vinyl. They're going to get higher, I'm sure.
Yeah, we definitely need more capacity, and there are some new companies popping up. They talk about in this article this company called Gold Rush Vinyl in Austin. You and I have talked about Crates, Qrates, Crates out of Tokyo, that's doing some cool things with vinyl production, kind of DIY vinyl production. But Chris says in this piece, that they also need to clean up the sales and distribution channel so that it's easy for record stores to actually get stock, which is frankly a joke. And he's not wrong. Was it that direct shot, all the issues they've had with fulfillment, the majors kind of went in together on one kind of logistics fulfillment solution that just has been a nightmare for indie retailers, not being able to get stock to the stores. And then you couple that with the problems with manufacturing and capacity. There's a lot of dollars being left on the table. And I think that's what Jack White is saying to these majors is like, I've got my vinyl plant, and he was way ahead of the curve, on getting his own vinyl plant. But I don't think he's wrong. I think the majors, vinyl's not going away anytime soon. In fact, the sales, as we've pointed out, is growing. It's a premium product. It's necessary. Maybe it's time for the majors to invest back. They had these facilities before. They got rid of them. Maybe now it's time to go back and rebuild some of these facilities to meet that demand.
I'd love to think they would. I just don't think they will. I hope I'm proven wrong on that. But boy, I just, we don't like to deal, the major labels, I think historically really don't like to deal in what is still niche products. And, it's a fairly substantial ramp up in investment if they want to get back into it. And to say nothing of the fact that, that brain trust, the people that did it in the old days, they're out of the picture. So you also have to train people. And it is a pretty considerable heavy lift, I think, for them to make that decision to get back into it.
Especially, no, you're right. Especially compared to digital music, which is, almost 85% of the business. And that infrastructure, there were some growing pains there. It's not as simple as people think it is, but now that those XML feeds are in place and they're delivering this wonderful music and metadata to the DSPs, they've kind of got this process in place. There's a lot more profit there. And I think you're absolutely right, which leads me to think that some enterprising funded person will do, kind of what we were talking about with some of the like Gold Rush and Crates, is maybe there's someone who is just going to take matters into their own hands and build a massive vinyl and maybe even cassette, who knows, but certainly vinyl pressing plant.
Without a doubt. Well, an interesting and important read because, and kudos to Chris Castle for bringing up a lot of very important points. So do check it out. And it's, at least right now, the demand is still sky high and the supply is low. And we all know what happens to prices when that happens.
Yes.
So.
Yes, sir.
So true, so true. All right, the next article, Jay, is from Billboard, of course, another article from Billboard. And the title is, "In a streaming-centric industry, all stakeholders must come to the table for lasting change."
Yeah. This is a guest column written by DEMA chief. If you don't know what DEMA is, it's a Digital Media Association. DEMA basically represents the digital service providers, like Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, Deezer. And Garrett Levin is their CEO. And I know Garrett. He's been on the Music Biz Weekly podcast. Really deliberate and insightful guy. And, this is kind of his guest column for Billboard, about this streaming industry, and that, look, there's people that are complaining about the payouts and about, how it's structured, but he's basically the voice of reason that's saying, let's all get to the table and talk through these things. As he points out, as streaming has become the preferred way for fans to listen to music, the music industry has experienced year after year of healthy financial growth. That is true. Over 500 million streaming subscribers worldwide now form the heart of this resurgent industry. Fans are engaging with music in ways never before possible and paying for it month after month via subscription fees and robust growth of once nascent digital audio advertising. So it's interesting. There's a lot more revenue being generated, but this is really less about the growth. We know it's growing, nearly 28% year over year for some of these DSPs that they talk about here, because Universal and Warner don't break down their publishing revenue specific to streaming. But there's a lot of revenue that you and I have been talking about week after week. And I think it's important to kind of take a look at how that's split up. And, we always talk about the CRB, the Copyright Royalty Board. That's that 3-judge panel that sets the rates that DSPs pay publishers, which equals songwriters, right? CRB 3 that's in place right now was passed wasn't passed. It was agreed to at 15.1%, but it's still around 10%. It's still being, Spotify and Amazon are still appealing the 15.1% that DSPs would pay out. And that has not been resolved to the best of my knowledge. So, the NMPA, the National Music Publishers Association, they want DSPs to pay more. DSPs want to pay less. And so, the DSPs are proposing dropping that songwriter, that publishing percentage from 15.1 to 10%, where it's currently kind of locked. The NMPA is proposing moving that to 20%, right? So, where would that increased money to songwriters come from? The NMPA claims that the DSPs can and should pay more versus the rights holders, which is typically the label. And I think that's really at the heart of this article, is that people are upset and streaming is being called, the death of the music industry as well as a savior of the music industry.
Right. And as he says, we've seen an increasing level of frustration from songwriters and artists about how streaming is impacting them on an individual level. As the overall revenues and royalties have increased massively, the frustration has grown louder. Frustrations. The unavoidable conclusion is that the writers and artists concerned cannot be solved simply through more streaming royalties paid to the largest rights holders. And that's really what he's also talking about is, the people that are really getting the revenue, it's the big artists. They are very happy with streaming, but it's these lower level artists that are not. And he says ultimately that while streaming is driving industry growth, it is neither the cause nor the solution to all the music industry's challenges. In the conversation about how to properly value songwriters and artists, it isn't wrong to ask that streaming services come to the table. We stand ready to be a part of those conversations with all interested parties. He says, together we should further explore alternative payment models such as user-centric, tackle ongoing data challenges that stymie effective and accurate royalty payments, and reconsider contracts premised on a pre-streaming industry. And he says, finally, we should look at how we value the creation of music separate from its consumption. And that's an important thing. We should look at how we value the creation of music separate from its consumption while recognizing that success in this industry has never been guaranteed. And that is another very important point, right? Just because you make music doesn't mean you are guaranteed to quit your job and enjoy a life where that is your principal income.
That's right. I like the line that music is who you are, not what you do. It's like you really don't have a choice. But he also, by bringing that up, it makes you think about, there's more than just the DSP payout. And he just described some of that. But there's also, you have to look at the value of the song. And you and I talk about this because it's really important. DSPs gain stock value that songwriters don't participate in. They also gain value in other ways. For example, Amazon has Prime memberships. Spotify has podcasts, merch, with Shopify, and they have that car thing. Apple has their product ecosystem, devices, Apple Fitness, all of that stuff. So the value of the song is a little bit more complex than just that streaming payout. But to point the finger at streaming is a little unfair because there's so much good that comes from it, and we need to be aware of that, but also fix the things that are broken. So some of the things that are good about it is it's really upended the traditional music industry economics. It's led to record labels, publishers, and other well-capitalized entities like KKR and Hypnosis and Primary Wave to invest billions in catalog that prior to streaming were wildly popular but had seen their earning potential really diminish as their sales receded. Streaming has turned those catalogs into a highly sought-after asset class. A credit to both their incredible artistic contributions and the economic realities of streaming. And I think that's really important to note.
Yeah, absolutely. Garrett ends it by saying, everything must be on the table and everybody must be at the table. Failure to approach these issues collectively and comprehensively will perpetuate the industry we see today, one with sky-high revenues for the largest rights holders and boiling frustrations from songwriters and artists, where streaming services are credited for the former and blamed for the latter.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much to be done. And by the way, let's not forget, it is still so cheap and probably too cheap for what we pay for music subscription services right now.
To have access to 70 million or whatever the number of tracks are today on a DSP, to get that for $9.99 a month, to me is just highly underpriced, and that's part of the problem as well. If you want to learn a little bit more about Garrett and Dima, I did an interview with him. It's episode number 447 of the Music Biz Weekly podcast. I did that last year, and it's a really great chat. Garrett is, again, his heart's in the right place, and I think that this isn't an easy problem where you just say, okay, well, we're just going to pay this group more. There's a lot more value and there's a lot more stakeholders, and to his point, we need to just get to the table and have these conversations.
Without a doubt, absolutely. Well, excellent reading and good just things to ponder, because there are lots of things that need to be worked out. And as he points out, but it's got to be involved with everybody at the table. So hopefully we'll get a little closer to that.
Nicely done.
Well, Jay, our last article is from Pollstar. The future is now. Major tours are here. And that is so true. Boy, it's so exciting to be back and to be at live shows. And we've both been at a few different live shows ourselves in the last few weeks, couple of months.
Yeah.
And I'm planning on more. And there is a rush to get out there by artists, aren't they? They are ready to get and start playing and start making money for crying out loud.
This piece was written by Bob Allen over at Pollstar. And if you're not aware of Pollstar, it's really the industry, the touring industry kind of Bible. This publication is absolutely amazing if you want to know what's going on in the world of live shows. But they also have on their website these guides that you can purchase. One might be the artist management guide, and one might be with record labels, and one might be publishing. And they're just one of those resources that we use every single day, and they're so valuable. Yes. And I read Pollstar because they have their finger on the pulse of the live concert industry. Anyway, this
absolutely.
Really,
and even if you are just a fan of music and want to go see who's coming to a concert, you can look up your city, you can look up a venue and see easily what's coming to town.
And see how they did, right? You can kind of take a look and, where are these tours sold out? What's the capacity and what are they doing as far as butts in the seats? But what's really interesting, and we'll dig into it in this article, is the amount of revenue that some of these artists are making.
Whoa.
He points out that the state of concert touring in any given year in North America traditionally begins to take form and gain strength as more and more artists hit the road, with the onset of spring. This year, the tradition has returned in full force, with a bustling slate of touring artists already headlining concerts during the first 2 months of 2022. So let's dig into some of those, because these numbers, I don't know about you, Mike, but some of these numbers, especially the Bad Bunny one, which we'll get into in a second,
it's
just
stunning.
Stunned. Yeah, it blew my mind.
Well, let's talk about Bad Bunny, because it says of all the artists that are in this article, Bad Bunny's on track to rank as one of the most impactful touring artists this year, based on box office results during the first 2 months of 2022. He said, as of press time, ticket counts and gross tallies have been reported for 13 shows at 10 venues on his El Ultimo Tour de Mundo jaunt that launched on February 9th. In just 1 month, check this out, his tour has been seen by almost 200,000 fans, while combined grosses from all shows land just over $39 million
in a month.
Whoa.
In a month.
Yeah, in just 1 month. His highest grossing venue on the trek so far, which is the Forum, just
in
not
our
far
backyard,
from us, in our backyard, that recorded a gross of $9.3 million from 32,000, a little over 32,000 tickets sold in 2 consecutive nights back in starting in February 25th. Currently, it is the top grossing concert engagement by any artist of any genre since the beginning of January, according to reported box office records. Dude, that is a ton of money.
Wow,
39 million gross.
Yeah, 9.3 million in 2 nights at the Forum. 39 million in a month, and that's the 200,000 fans. That is impressive. He talks about Billie Eilish. She's now a headlining artist, with her, Where Do We Go world tour was planned for 2020. Then it was, interrupted by COVID-19 after 3 concerts. So now it's the Happier Than Ever tour, which began February 3rd in New Orleans and is booked in arenas worldwide, and although she played some arenas, from the last tour, prior to that, she had appeared primarily in smaller venues for live shows. So the 2020 tour, was right after she had won, 4 Grammys and was really starting to establish herself. But this is going to be another one of those big revenue generators with 6 recent dates reported from the Happier Than Ever tour. Her best box office numbers were recorded at Washington's Capital One Arena on February 9th with a crowd of just over 13,000 people and a $1.67 million gross. Sold ticket averages from her reported 22 event shows, 12,408 sold seats per concert, while her gross average, 1.48 million. A sharp contrast to the 2019, where it was under $500,000 average. That's some real money.
And I'd be happier than ever as well if I was making that kind of money on her Happier Than Ever tour. We've also got Dua Lipa out. She's out with her Future Nostalgia Trek. Began with a sold-out debut performance at Miami's FTX Arena. Opening night crowd, about a little over 14,000. Gross of 1.56 million. She, like Eilish, also had an ill-fated 2020 tour in the works that ultimately had to be rescheduled 3 times.
Wow.
The original itinerary featured only European dates, but since the initial tour announcement in 2019, tour legs were added in North and South America, as well as Australia and New Zealand. Yeah. So what did she make? Let's see. She
combined 7 show gross. You see it there?
Yep. Yep. So total count of 92,000 tickets so far. Tours combined 7 show gross totals $8.78 million.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not
let
so
me,
bad.
Let me just resonate on that for a second. 92,000 tickets sold and almost $9 million. You know, and there's a couple of other, we'll run through a few other these artists because I think they're important. You know, Casey Musgraves, you know, for example, set her 2022 tour dates with a performance at Xcel Energy Center. That's in St. Paul, Minnesota. 6 of her shows have been reported at this point, including a sold-out evening at Madison Square Garden. And that February 5th concert drew 14,370 fans with a gross of over $1.7 million.
So we've got Kane Brown, we've got Eric Church, we've got Tyler the Creator, we've got Billy Joel, we've got Reba McEntire, and don't forget the big kahuna out there, Sir Elton John's Farewell Yellow Brick Road Tour. Basically, remember, he had to cancel a lot of dates. It returned on January 19th, with dates scheduled over 10 U.S. cities, first 2 months of 2022. And that tour is going to go for another 2 years, I think. It's going to keep going for a long time.
My buddy Matt is his bass player, so I'm kind of watching as these dates come back, and I can't wait to see the show. You know, because a lot of artists, Kiss, Elton John, whoever, a lot of them will say, "Oh, this is the final tour," but then they do tours after that. For Kiss and for Elton John, I can tell you this is their last tours. So it is going to be fun to go back and see that. But as you pointed out with Tyler the Creator and Eric Church and Kane Brown and some of these others, people are so hungry for live music, and some of these artists, maybe not these top artists, but certainly the indie artists have, been eating sawdust for a year and a half. So let's get out and support them. And when you go to those shows, especially with these indie artists, make sure you buy a shirt or something at the merch table and help them out a little bit. But again, Pollstar is the place to go if you want to find out what's going on with the live concert industry. And I'm just thrilled to see these bands all back out. People are going in droves, and as they point out here, there is some revenue to be made. And Bad Bunny, congratulations, brother, because you are killing it.
You are killing it. By the way, and also, a lot of residencies happening as well. So, I was just in Vegas not 2 weeks ago, I guess, and you're really seeing, and for an artist, you can see how that makes sense. You just kind of roll in and you're there for whatever it is, amount of time, and it's a lot less wear and tear.
You don't have to pack up and reset up. You get the sound dialed and the lights dialed, and you're golden.
You're golden, and you just keep doing it over and over again. So on that note, we do need to wrap it up, Jay. I wrap up episode 84 of the Your Morning Coffee podcast. Can you believe it? 84. Man, oh man. We're getting close, man. We are getting close to 100.
I think you and I were chatting earlier about if things go according to plan, I think we'll hit episode 100 right around the end of June, maybe the first week of July. And we will have a couple of special announcements before then. We have another bonus episode coming up that we're recording in April that we'll tell people about. And there'll be some really cool surprises coming, but stay tuned.
Absolutely.
And I can't believe we're at episode 84 already. It's crazy.
and thanks everyone for listening in and supporting us. We really appreciate it because as much as we like doing this, we couldn't do it unless people were listening in. Yeah. So big thanks. And of course, thanks to our sponsors as well. We certainly appreciate their participation, including the Music Business Association, Bandzoogle, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. They make it worth our while every time. So big thanks. And thank you, Jay. Have a wonderful weekend, brother.
You too.
Good seeing you. All right. And thanks everyone for listening. You've been listening to episode 84 of the Your Morning Coffee podcast. We will see you next week.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.